Ladies and gentlemen, everyone around and in between, it is DebateSensei NPDA edition, where we talk about things relevant to parliamentary debate at the college level. I have with me Mr. Paul Villa from Diablo Valley College. Thank you so much, Paul, for being here.
Yeah, good to see you again, Jared.
Excellent. So let me just turn up my speakers here so I can hear you better. All right. Hey, we are getting toward the end of the semester. And for us community college faculty, the big tournament of the year is Phi Rho Pi. And so we're going to do a Phi Rho Pi recap, but specifically just for the parliamentary debate. All right.
Sure.
So even though there's a bunch of events. All right. Tell our viewers a little bit about what makes Phi Rho Pi so unique.
So Phi Rho Pi, for starters, is a community college only tournament. And so that tends to mean that the judging pool is far more traditional than it is sort of progressive in terms of like what you consider circuit debate. In addition, even beyond just like standard community college debate, because there's a number of community colleges in California that do a little more progressive debate, whether that's us or El Camino or San Joaquin Delta. This is like national traditional parley. So like I'm traditional judge from Oklahoma or traditional judge from Florida, right? And down there, they don't really have NPDA. They have APDA, which is even more traditional.
Oh.
It's very different. And then secondarily, if you're in the IPDA pool, you are in the parley pool.
Oh, really?
And so that means you end up with a lot of people who have never judged a parliamentary debate, judging debates at the good old Phi Rho Pi National Championship tournament. The second thing that is unique to Phi Rho Pi, and I guess also state, is that we do not have a single topic and there is no coach prep. And so instead, there is a slate of 5 topics given to students, which are 2 policy topics, 2 value topics, and then 1 fact or value topic as the 5th option. And so this sort of implicates how students can prepare for the debate, obviously being a little bit different than it is when you have your own coach and you kind of have someone guiding the strategy for you. The ability to strike topics lets students center in on a wheelhouse if they want. Like you can just always strike the 2 policy topics if you want, always strike the 2 value topics if you think that's your best bet. And I would say that those are sort of the biggest differences other than like having to be traditional. When I say traditional, I mean, don't go really fast. Don't be overly technical in terms of jargon, things like that.
Right. Well, things like critiques, are they so traditional that they don't even listen to counter plans or?
In parley, I think there are a good amount of counter plans, is my understanding from my students. My understanding is there's like maybe 1K in the entire tournament. In all rounds of all debate events. Like,
whoa.
Probably, right? Like I heard about 1K.
Oh, wow. You heard one.
Well, I didn't hear it. I heard of one happening. I'm
okay.
Like what's going on in the parley rounds. We had a big parley entry. I heard literally one team say they ran a K the entire tournament in parley, and then like 1 more in LD.
The funny thing is if you just don't call it a K or do all the jargon, like the people usually are able to follow it. I think.
Just have a value debate.
Yeah.
And,
it's pretty much what it is. Yeah. So, all right. Okay. And so also this is a freaking week-long tournament. It is a marathon.
It is a week-long tournament that takes place in a hotel always, but this year's hotel was a casino and hotel. And so if you were a coach, that meant, up at 6 a.m. or whatever so that you can do warm-ups at 7 if you're with a speech team, and then rounds ending around 7 or 8 p.m. depending on the day, and then hanging out at the old office with the other coaches until God knows when. Wasn't a lot of sleep to be had.
All right. And I'm looking at the overall parley entry. There was 49 entries.
Yeah.
That's more than NPDA.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. It was honestly, we were having a discussion about this. There's a bit of a resurgence this year for both LD and parley at Phi Rho Pi. No small part of that is because some schools that hadn't really been present in the last year or two have picked it up. I would say chiefly among those is IVC. Irvine Valley College in Southern California, led by Bill Neeson. They had a pretty big debate entry in all 3 events, and that was really nice to see. But yeah, I mean, there was a good amount of entries kind of all over the place. And also teams that like I know do parley, but I don't think a lot of people would, like Orange Coast College. They're not big on parley during the year. They're bigger on IPDA, but when they go to nationals, if you got a debater, you're going to put them in parley, to the degree that you can. And so yeah, there's a good amount of entries. 49 is a healthy field for just about any tournament, in my opinion.
Yeah. And hey, do you know what the NPTE entry is looking like this
The
year?
entry, if I'm not mistaken, is going to be 21 or 22.
Okay.
Now, obviously, that's a qualification tournament, so it's a little bit different. But yeah,
Absolutely. You have to get. Oh man, I wonder what and that's like first and second round bids and things like that. Okay.
yes.
All right. This one has 6 prelim rounds. I'm looking through the breaks. It looks like there were some 3-3s that broke, huh?
I think there were a couple 3-3s that broke, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So not bad. I mean, if you can break even and just get good speaker points, you're breaking. That's not bad at all.
It's a tough tournament in general because you never know if you're gonna luck into a pull-up break like that.
Right.
Whether that's in speech or in debate. So in speech, the rule they have is that if you get a 7 or lower across 3 rounds, if you fume a 7 or lower, you're guaranteed to break. But then the rules say, and if we need to hit this certain percentage, we can also break all of the 8s. And in debate, kind of the same thing. We can pull up to 3 people, up to 3 teams, to make a bracket that's divisible by 4. And so that's what they did in this instance.
Right. Just like state we talked about last time, there isn't necessarily a single winner of first place in debate. They basically do a bronze round and then a gold silver round. So if you know anything about bracketing, that means that you'd have multiples of 4 basically every time, right? And like, yeah. So that's why, 3 or less people getting pulled up. Otherwise, you'd be pulling up basically an entire bracket. Not technically, but for all intents and purposes, you'd be doing that. So
and functionally, what they do in speech, which is not really a thing we do in debate, is they'll announce like low cum, and so like 3 people might get a gold, but they'll announce the person who had the overall lowest score as like, oh, kind of, you effectively did the best. Like we could do that with debate, but it's not really a thing. Like there is a team that was the highest seed and that one.
Okay,
that's like kind of the question. There's only, as far as I'm aware, there's only one team that went undefeated in Parliament.
Only one team. Okay, we'll talk about that when we get to the breaks in a little bit. Yeah. Okay. Were you judging the whole time?
I was judging the whole time, and it was very interesting. They had so my fellow coach Drew, who is our limited prep coach at DVC, they had him doing nothing but impromptu extemp, IPDA, parley, and LD the whole tournament. And then me, they had doing like pros, reader speaker, and like I did a good amount of debate for sure, more LG than anything else. But yeah, it was tough from that end because they at Phi Rho Pi they give you what they call dance cards, which means they tell you every single round that you are either judging or on standby. And in this case, for the first 4 days, every single person that had a standby ballot got an actual ballot.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, they ended up being a lot. They tried to hire, I think they said 10 or 11 judges, and only ended up with 4. And so you were working. If you were at that tournament, you were working a lot of hours.
Okay. All right. So tell me a little bit about these topics. Do they have similar rules to state about writing the topics, about what the
yes, so you have to get the topics from a variety of regions, essentially, is what it comes down to. Each region is allowed to submit a certain amount of topics, and then the tab room and the debate tab goes through those topics to sort of evaluate them for 1, wording, 2, things like DEI concerns, right? And an example of that might be if a topic comes in as saying, like, we should increase our the amount of foreign language classes being offered. They would likely change that to world language classes being offered, things like that. That don't actually change the spirit of the resolution, but just change it for DEI reasons. But the rules regarding topics is that there must be 2 policy, 2 value, and then the last topic must be a value or fact. There are no metaphors allowed at Phi Rho Pi.
A value or a fact. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And unlike state this year, as far as I'm aware, they did not label which topics were which.
Yeah, I'm looking at these right now, and I don't see the little, fact value policy with a little colon beforehand. So when I'm looking at even just round 1, it looks like their quote unquote fact one is the U.S. federal immigration policy is broken beyond repair. That seems to imply a bit of a policy there.
Yeah. And there's just a lot of stuff going on there where it's like they. So this is actually an interesting point where because they don't label their topics, and this is why I did intentionally label the topics at State when I was the director and I was in charge of the topics. There's a startling number of ballots my students had where they just won because the other team said it was a fact and they said it was a value, and then we were ready to justify why it's a value. They weren't really ready to justify why it's a fact, and the judge was just like, "Well, you don't operate under the value criterion or whatever, and so you lose."
Yeah.
And while I do think that's certainly a skill thing, and it's good that my students knew how to do that, and some other students knew how to do that, I don't like when a debate ends before it starts because of something
Yeah.
like that. And so for me, it's like, why don't we just label them? I also think for the purpose of like data collection, just getting an idea of like, do these regions agree on what a fact or value topic is?
Right.
I'm pretty sure they don't, based on the things I saw this year.
But not only that, but like, so what we're talking about, at least as I've known it, is the trichotomy. And it's one of the first lessons that like every debate student learns, especially in parley, because you get thrown a bunch of these different ones. And the weird thing is that I don't know, I hear so many people talk about how there are 3 types of resolutions, and they coach their students on how to say, it's like, oh, if they say it's a value, then you say it's a fact, which inherently means that you see that there are gray areas. You inherently believe that, you acknowledge that you can make an argument that it's one as opposed to the other, which undermines this whole idea that it has to be one and not the other. I don't like,
Yeah, I mean, I think the decision that has to be made when you're doing this is either A, you want students to debate what kind of topic it is, in which
yeah,
case writing gray area topic is fine. Or B, if that is not what you want, if that's not what you think is desirable, those aren't the debates you're trying to produce, why are you writing nebulous topics? It is
yeah,
very, very easy to write a topic that is
yeah,
objectively a value and objectively a fact and objectively a policy, in my opinion.
yeah. We actually did one episode on one of your rounds. I think it might have been the bronze round topics from State, and we were just talking about how like, okay, these topics are written well. So just to give you a little feedback there, it's like we loved it. Yeah,
Appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, it's
yeah,
just, I mean, for me, I think that especially given the variance in the judging pool, I don't want students losing because some judge who doesn't even do parley debate, who has never thought, it doesn't know what the word trichotomy means.
okay,
I want them voting a student down because the topic was nebulous. It's like, what? That it defeats the whole purpose of the clash and whatnot.
okay. So I'll put you on the spot a little bit here. Sometimes I hear like one or more topics where people just talk about how weird it was, or how it stood out, or just poorly worded, or they had to debate it and they didn't want to. Just sticking with like some of the prelim rounds, did that ever emerge? Was there any, like, I remember in my year, I'll never forget, this topic was what art is like a shark, it has to move forward or it will die.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, like, I'm like, what the heck? Was there any standout topics that just kind of like people were talking about how they loved it or they hated it
Um,
beyond? Yeah.
there were a few topics that I heard about that
Mm.
I was confused about personally.
Okay.
And so, for instance, one of those topics was in round 5. A few teams debated this topic number 3, which is a coup is justified when it overthrows an undemocratic election. And this
Uh,
topic had a similar problem to. Let me see if this was in Parley or in IPDA. I guess it was in IPDA, but in IPDA there was this topic that said revenge is sometimes justified. And the problem in both of these debates that I kept hearing was people were playing it really, really fast and loose with what
mm,
the word coup and what the word revenge meant.
mm.
Like in the debate that I watched on the revenge topic, for instance, they were like, protests are revenge.
Okay.
Like like the civil rights movement was revenge.
Oh man.
And I was like, what? And they're like, well, revenge is when you respond to something potentially with violence, but at the expense of others. And I was like, okay. And it's like, I don't know if that's what that topic's for, right? Or like the coup thing, similarly. They're like, well, it was a coup, in the sense that it replaced the existing government, but not like a military coup. It was just like a different kind of coup. And I'm just like, okay. And so I didn't love those.
Yeah.
From that perspective, a few weird things there. There were, something I tell my students when it comes to striking is that when in doubt, strike to a topic where you really don't care what side you're on.
Yeah.
And the way you do that at these tournaments, for the most part, is actually by striking to value instead of policy. My students, we don't practice a lot of value because most of our debates are policy, but my students had a startling amount of value debates at this tournament on purpose. And they basically just told me, like, yeah, we're just going into every single debate, and the plan is we're just going to win that whatever's on our side of the value equation sequences theirs. And so there's a topic in the bronze round that was like national infrastructure outweighs national security. And they were the app, and they're like, we're just going to read all these arguments about why national security is dependent on national infrastructure. There was a topic about like economic policy versus environmental policy. Same deal. Economic policy sequences environmental policy. You can't have good environmental policy if your country has to burn tires to stay warm, like whatever. Yeah. While I like those topics, I don't know that is what the topic writer, the framer, for lack of a better word, intended. Like, I don't know if that is the framer's intent, right? I think they probably meant for you to do like one side versus the other side. And I think it's also got weird because like my kids, the concept of a permutation to me is a very simple concept, right? Permutation, is where you're testing the link of the other team's competitiveness regarding an advocacy they're proposing, right? Permutations test whether there is an opportunity cost associated with this. My kids were like, people are reading perms on the neg, Paul. People are reading perms on the negative. Like they're saying the word perm and then being like both. And I'm like, in value, they're like, Paul, in value, fact, and policy. And I'm just like, well, this is kooky. This is kooky. So I don't know. It was
I've always thought of perms as just like, is there actually a forced choice between the affirmative and the negative proposals? If there's no forced choice, then you can advocate for a perm, or you can at least conceptually I'm not even a big proponent that you have to advocate for the perm. I think those are somewhat arbitrary rules that people
I agree with you completely, actually. When I explain to my students, like, biggest picture that they won't understand but is true, there are actually only 3 kinds of arguments in debate as far as I'm concerned, and those are disads, advocacies, and frameworks, right? Framework arguments. And really, you could kind of boil it down to 2 if you wanted to, which is there are framework arguments and there are opportunity cost arguments. And I explained to them how when you're saying we meet on a topicality, what you're actually saying is there is no link to the disad that is us being untopical.
Right.
When you say permutation on a counterplan, what you're actually saying is there is no link to the counterplan being an opportunity cost to the affirmative, right?
Yeah.
And these things mean the same thing, but people don't understand them. So then they just hear the word perm and they're like, well, I'm just going to latch onto that. That's what I say from now on.
Yeah. It's what happened. It's what really helped me understand critical perms too. So somebody reads a critique against you, you can perm it if there's no necessary opportunity cost, if there's not a forced choice between your advocacy and their critique. You can advocate for a perm between those 2 things.
This is my most unpopular opinion in all of debate, which is that I genuinely believe, as insofar as the way that I see 95% of teams go for the critique, I think perm double bind is the best argument against almost all of the critiques I see. Because people frame the critique as if it's an advocacy in like all of these rounds.
Yeah.
But the advocacy is like, think about stuff differently.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can be a vegan and like believe in vegan ethics and think it's bad to hurt animals and all this kind of stuff and eat a burger at the same time. And the second you're done with that burger, you could go right back to being a vegan.
Yeah.
It's just like the idea that a thought process can be mutually exclusive with the app only functions if you're not reading the K like an advocacy, if you're reading it like, an opportunity cost to the methodology of the app, which doesn't happen very often. So I totally agree. It's like perm stuff gets weird.
Yeah. Out of the prelim rounds, any of them that you saw that were like, hey, not bad? Topics that you liked even.
I saw, man, we have a video on this on Proteus. The speech that I used to give in Parley always, like every single year of my career, I was the MO. So when I was with Dallas, when I wasn't with Dallas, senior year, junior year, I was the MO. And so the MO is the speech that makes the most sense to me. And when I think of the MO, I think about collapsing.
Yeah.
And what I would say is maybe my single biggest criticism of teams that I watched in this tournament was just not collapsing.
Right.
And I think that collapsing is good in LD and in IPDA and in basically all formats of debate, unless you're just like winning everything and just, it's a hyper-technical debate. But in two-person debate, trust me, if there's no splitting the block, you just have to collapse. Because
Right.
what I kept seeing over and over again was an MO go for whatever arguments, some set of arguments, usually almost all of them. And then the LOR come up and go, I'm only going for this one, kind of. And I'm just like, what I watched around where the MO went for everything, but they did go for the disad that was conceded, and that was just a free win. And then I watched an LOR come up and exclusively only go for the other disad that was like 7-pointed. And I'm just, and so I would legitimately say, as far as Parley went, I did not watch a single round that I would consider to be a particularly high level or a single debater that I consider to be particularly effective and good, which was shocking because I watched no less than 3 people in IPDA who I was like, oh, wow, this kid is super talented. And
really?
like in Parley, you would have crushed it. There was a specific kid from OCC, I'll say his name, Campbell, who I watched, and OCC is primarily an IE school. They do, IPDA, they do a little bit of Parley. But this kid did not know any of the jargon. It was very clear. They didn't know any of the jargon, but the arguments they were reading and the way they were approaching the round was so strategic and awesome that I was just like, wow, like you don't even know this is happening, but it's incredible. Yeah. And so I saw a few of those people where I was like, wow, this person really gets it. Well, maybe they don't have access to the vocabulary to explain what's happening, or maybe they're intentionally not using that vocabulary, which would be weird with me as your judge. But yeah, I was very surprised. I mostly saw very good IPDAers and just okay Parley people.
Oh, really?
Now, to be fair, the IPDA pool is huge, right? And so there aren't really issues with how, I guess I would phrase this as, so I had 4 Parley teams at this tournament, and all 4 of them broke. And so in any given round, there is a fair chance that if the round was a high win round, like you're at round 3 and you have 3 wins, or high round 4, there's a good chance you were hitting one of my students, which obviously means in Parley I can't judge you. Whereas my kids did poorer in IPDA, and there's just more IPDA, so I could randomly do a 5-0 debate or a 4-0 debate or whatever. And so I think that might have been part of the issue in Parley, if that makes sense, where it's just I can't judge those debates.
Well, I was going to get into the breaks, but you already you led into it very well. So you got 4 breaks. Let's give some shout outs. We got College of DuPage with 1, Clovis, nice, getting 1, Western Idaho. I don't remember.
That team's legit good.
Huh?
I didn't get to watch them at this tournament. I watched them at Tabor in 3 rounds. I judged them in a prelim and 2 elims, and they were really good every time. They're very much like an IPDA team of 2 good IPDAers that don't know the Parley jargon, but they are very, very good at prep, especially.
Nice. Okay. We have Diablo Valley with 4. Were you the big break in debate?
Yes. The next highest was 2. We broke 4. Same thing with LB.
Okay. I see El Camino brought a lot, but they only broke 1?
It was not the greatest tournament in the world for El Camino. I was talking to Brittany about this a lot. Not sure why it didn't come through. Not sure if it was an adaptation thing. They had a lot of kids end up at 3, as far as I'm aware, which is always
I saw that.
And one of the 3 threes that did break was their team on high speed, so that was awesome for them. But then that team, I think, immediately hit my students. And we were like the 2nd seed or something. We were 6-0.
I think I've told you that El Camino is my alma mater, so I got a little soft spot. Yeah, so that's a little heartbreaking. Well, for me, not for you necessarily, but yeah, I mean, yeah. We got Harper College bringing 1 out. IVC has only 1 that they got out.
Yeah.
KCC got 1.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Delta
Modesto
got one as
got
well.
1. OCC got 3? 4? No, 3. Okay. San Joaquin looks like they got 2. Solano, I remember them. Tallahassee tends to get 1 out. Tyler. Yeah. All right. So, and then they broke 20 out of the 49. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the did you vote? Did you vote? Did you judge any bronze rounds?
Let me think about that real quick. It's actually a great question. It all feels like a blur at this point. I want to say I did not judge any bronze rounds. There were only like 1 or 2 that I could judge, I think,
Yeah.
as far as I'm aware, because we were obviously in 4 of those 6 debates, I think it was, or 5 debates, whatever it was. However
Yeah,
many.
if there's 20, there's only 5 out, so you wouldn't be able to. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I did not get to judge the bronze rounds. I got to hear about my kids. I got to sit outside the doors and listen in, but that's about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's no coaching, so
Yeah.
do you know what topics your students did or
Yeah,
what
give
the
me 1
variety
second to
was?
pull up the topic list because I definitely remember. So in Elim 1, we had 1 team that debated the first topic: the USFG should implement a federal holiday for Election Day. I know we dropped in that debate.
Oh,
And then, if I'm not mistaken, in every other one of our debates, we debated national infrastructure outweighs national security.
okay. And then okay.
And then we picked up in 2 of those debates. Yeah, and headed to the gold round.
All right. So, and you say in those value rounds, the this versus that, you tend to go with the sequencing argument.
Yeah.
I always learned it as the that it was the instrumental value versus the terminal value. I don't know if that's a terminology that you run with ever, but yeah,
Could
I
you
don't know.
explain that real quick? I just want to make sure because I actually haven't heard that. And that'd be value debate is one of my weaker suits, so I'm always
Okay.
interested in hearing about tips for value debate. And to be
So
real,
it's pretty much the same thing. We just called it an instrumental value. That one is instrumental, and the other being terminal. And then we would make arguments that instrumental values are more important than terminal values. So it's the same type of sequencing argument, I think, just with different language.
interesting, interesting.
And so,
Okay,
yeah. So one's instrumental to the other. You know what I mean? And so you kind of the burden is that you have to kind of prove that there is some sort of necessary component to that not just sufficient, you know what I mean, in order to win that value. But it's hard sometimes.
totally.
You can't always find it. Okay, so the national infrastructure, the election day, man, that one's. I have election day topics for my my debate classes because they're always relevant, basically. You know what I mean? And the federal holiday one is they didn't pick up on the F, huh? Oh well.
Yeah, I was baffled.
Oh really?
It sounds from the hearing them talking about it, they just felt like they went for the wrong thing. But I'm like, how do you even lose that? What is the
Yeah.
dissad? I think the dissad was like business confidence. Like we'll lose a day of work,
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
it's like we're gonna lose a day of work. That's the dissad.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
And also, like, people can work on federal holidays. It's only
Yeah.
public things that have to be closed
Yeah.
on federal holidays. I don't know. Anyway, what wasn't
Yeah.
our best moment for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. But again, it's like the judging in Phi Rho Pi is a little wonky. You kind of get a good variety there. All right. So you got a couple of teams in the gold round. What were the topics they landed on for that?
So we had 2 topics. We had the United States federal government should significantly alter the presidential primary process, where we were AF, and then we had free speech zones are preferable to censorship, where I believe we were also AF.
Okay, so both of them AF. So significantly alter the presidential primary process. Do they tell you what they did?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, they made it ranked choice voting.
Ranked choice. Oh, okay, nice. Another sort of election policy. That one that I have done in my classes. Yeah, but that one's really cool.
And then
Where
sorry, go ahead.
yeah, you just take however many you got, and you could give them a first, second, third, fourth, and fifth, rather than just one vote. And then it's very much like tabbing from that point on. Anyone who's done a debate tournament knows. So it's pretty good. So how did they do on that?
That team ended up picking up on that. That team lost 1 ballot in bronze, and other than that, was perfect throughout the tournament.
Oh, really? Very nice. Okay.
And then free speech zones are preferable to censorship. This is where we went off the rails.
Oh no.
Our students came out and they're like, "Oh, we whooped them on the definition debate." I'm like, "What word did you define?" And they're like, "Oh, well, we defined like they defined like censorship and like free speech zones in a way that had like very little to do with those concepts." So
Okay.
other team was like, free speech zones refers to this idea that like on college campuses there should be places where free speech happens, and they applied it more broadly, and they like tied in the concept of like Sharia law. And they were like, you can't speak freely on like this or this and like these nations or whatever regarding like apostasy. How do you say that word, right? Like religious.
Apostate? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, there's just no way your judges are going to vote for that. Turns out the answer was correct. They will not vote for that. I was like, there's no way. I'm like, you're just wrong. Like, I don't even care if you won the definitions debate, if they didn't answer it. Like, there's no way that your college professor judges are going to agree with your definition over the other team who's objectively correct about what this word does mean. And they're like, no, trust me. I'm like, I don't. I think you lost that round. Turns out, pretty good guess.
Yeah, it seems like that is specifically for like campus culture, right? Like
really.
I don't think that there's any other sort of application of a free speech zone. I mean, yeah, I can't think. Even at rallies where they have areas for the for journalists, those aren't called free speech zones.
Yeah, my student tried to like define the individual words. Like free speech means this.
Yeah, that's where you go off.
And therefore, a free speech zone is an area where free speech is allowed. And it's like, okay.
God. Oh man.
And so they're like, yeah, and like these Middle Eastern countries with Sharia law, that's not allowed.
Okay. Now it at least makes more sense. I could see the trail that they followed to get there, but it was the wrong trail. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And it's just like, this is one of those things where they tried to get too cute with it. They tried to like pull the trick, and it's like, yeah, but that's not what you're trying to do here. Like, just debate the topic straight up. Like, there is ground on both sides of this topic. So why are we trying to make it like cute, for lack of a better word?
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I love creative definitions. Probably, I don't know. I think I might be, a little further on that side of the spectrum where I'm like, yeah, go for it. But even so, it's like, but still just debate the topic. You know what I mean? It's like you can be creative, but it's still there's.
Well, it's like we're in gold, kid.
Yeah.
Like why are we mixing things up now? Why are we trying to be creative and whatnot now? It's like dance with the one that brought you there.
Yeah. Just go straight up. So how did I guess do they put all of the debate events together for sweepstakes? Is IPDA? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So they do overall sweepstakes, which is speech and debate, and then they do debate sweepstakes, which is the 3 debate events.
Okay. So who took the debate sweeps?
We did.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah, we broke all 4 in LD and got 3 golds. We broke all 4 in parley, got 1 gold, a silver, and 2 bronzes, and then we broke 2 in IPDA and got a bronze and a gold. So
there you go. Excellent. Great job. All right. Well, this is the last major speech for community college folks, unless they're going to NPTE. Do you know of any community college?
KCC is, but that's about it as far as I'm aware.
Okay. So maybe for that one community college, they got one more. But I'm planning on doing a recap of that one with you. And so I'm looking forward to that. Thank you for giving us a little bit of insight into Phi Rho Pi and how it operates and the outcome.
Cool. All right. Catch you later, Jared.
All right. See ya.